Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
This happened twice to me. I was reading as I always did before going to sleep. I don't particularly care for ebooks, but I read them in bed with the lights out on my tablet so I can turn it off and just roll over and go to sleep without worrying about turning off a light. The first time, I was reading a story by, I forget who. It was a Kindle book, and they seem to publish authors who have no hope of getting published except self-published or on Kindle. But this one was pretty good. It was a ghost story, but surely people don't know how to write those anymore. So I'm reading and my eyes start to get tired. So I turn off the tablet and settle to fall asleep. And I was just drifting off when I heard a low, guttural growl right next to my ear. I looked to find the source, but there was none. The cat was outside, so it wasn't them, even though it really didn't sound like a cat, nor dog for that matter. It ended without an incident. I laid there contemplating what it could be and why did it happen. I had no answer and decided maybe I was hearing things, so I went to sleep until it happened again another night. The second time, I had finished reading for the night after growing tired. I shut off the tablet and settled to sleep. I remember it was a nice sleep, and may have or not dreamed. I don't actually remember. I woke up suddenly, hearing the same low, guttural growling. I lay there listening to it when it suddenly stopped. I listened for it a few before allowing myself to go back to sleep. I haven't heard it since. It's a little long. I've been dying to tell this story that happened to me in the middle of August of this year, when I was startled awake from a sound sleep to someone standing in my bed by the window staring at me. I never doubted the paranormal/supernatural. I believe undoubtedly in the existence of ghosts, spirits, specters, apparitions, whatever you want to call them, and poltergeist activity. Although many videos on YouTube and paranormal shows on TV don't convince me, because they are obviously fake and for entertainment purposes. There are a couple of exceptions, of course, but most, you gotta admit that the most terrifying thing about them is that someone posted them. Again, there are a few exceptions that have convinced me of something happening. I've used the Ouija board by myself and even collected vintage boards, but that is another story. I've used automatic writing, studied astrology, tarot, geomancy, necromancy, runes, playing cards, aka cardomancy, and dabbled in palmistry. I've seen ghosts, not seen through apparitions, but solid individuals in broad daylight. One was a friend whom I hadn't seen in a while, whom I saw walking in town. I called to her, and she kept walking, thinking she may not have heard me, and it was unlike her to ignore people. I finally made my way close enough. She stopped and turned, and her eyes were black. Thought I was seeing things, and followed her into a store, and couldn't find her. I saw a mutual friend, who knew both of us, and asked if she'd seen her, and she told me no one has been in the store in the previous half an hour. I was confused. No, I saw her. And to some, it may sound like she was avoiding me, but it wasn't like that. Puzzled, I went home and saw the local paper. That very friend's obituary was in there. She committed suicide 2 weeks prior by overdosing on pills. I believe seeing ghosts is a personal thing. The mutual friend didn't see her entering the store, but I saw her plain as day. Must have looked like a fool, shouting her name in public. But if you want to hear or read about my experiences with the Shadow Man, Shadow people, I have trouble believing in them. I thought they were urban legends like Slender Man, Bloody Mary, and Zozo. Videos claiming to capture them always were lacking. I went to bed as usual on that night in mid-August. The night was perfect, not hot, not cold, great sleeping weather. Nothing was happening that I was interested in doing, so I decided to go to bed and do a bit of reading until I was tired enough to fall asleep. That was at 11, and I finally got tired at 12:30 and drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, I was startled awake from a sound sleep. I mean, wide awake. I could move all of my appendages, so it wasn't sleep paralysis, I think. It was close to 3 a.m. or thereabout. The street lamps and the moon shone through my bedroom window. That never bothered me, as I can sleep with the lights on or off, and have, but I noticed a figure, or rather a silhouette of a figure, standing inside at my window. I was convinced it was a break-in, and lay quietly, waiting for him to make his move, but he never did. He was around 6 foot 2 inches tall, and broad-chested. I mean, he was big, and just staring at me, never moving. I won't deny that I was scared, thinking this guy was going to bash my brains or suffocate me, but that didn't happen. As I was watching him, trying to figure out how that big guy got in my window without being struck, he started to fade away until he wasn't there anymore. I lay there for a few minutes longer, thinking if I got out of bed, he'd reappear. After what seemed like forever, I jumped out of bed and turned on the light. I examined the window and found nothing unusual, such as smashed or even open. It was how I left it. You would probably think that I wasn't going back to sleep after that. I did, but with the lights on. To be honest, I was relieved that it was a shadow person, that someone breaking into my house. The guy faded out of existence. I think the thought crossed my mind. He just went invisible to catch me as I got out of bed to turn on the lights. But I haven't had a second encounter with any shadow person as of right now. Unfortunately, I can't prove any of this because I didn't have my phone on me or near me because it was in the other room charging. I spent a lot of time thinking about this encounter, and just glad it didn't result in my hospitalization or burial. Recently, I was asked by my cousin to babysit her 3-year-old daughter and her newborn. We'll call the 3-year-old JJ and the newborn W for the purposes of this story. My cousin and I are very close, and I was even her bridesmaid in her wedding. JJ loves me, and we always have such a good time together. My parents decided to stay at our apartment for the weekend while I went to my cousin's. My parents and I have experienced many changes recently, including a new house, new job for both of us, and the loss of a close family member. We have also been experiencing an escalation in the paranormal activity happening at our new house. It had been quiet when we moved from our apartment to the house, but in the last month it has gotten worse. Grief and changes in schedule can increase activity, or so I've heard. So getting out to babysit was a welcome change. When I first got to my cousin's apartment, everything was great. We caught up over tea as the girls slept for their afternoon nap. My cousin headed out around 3 p.m. and would be gone for 2 nights. She was worried because this was the first time she had gone away since she had JJ. JJ was done potty training, W was 4 months old, and bottle fed, so I reassured her everything would be totally fine. Her ex-husband would check in on the Saturday to take the girls for lunch, and I was pretty experienced in babysitting. That night after dinner and bottle feeding was done, everyone was changed and in bed. I sat up to watch some TV. I popped on some Narcos and fell asleep setting up. I woke up to a really loud commercial, only to watch the TV shut itself off. No biggie. It was a smart TV and probably had a timer. Then I heard JJ. She was babbling away to someone, and I could tell she was pretty unhappy with whatever was being said. Her voice was whiny and sounded like she was going to cry. I figured she was having a dream, so I went to check on her. When I got to her room, her light was on, which was unusual. The only light in her bedroom was a 5-foot-tall foot lamp that had a button that was too high for her to reach. She is only maybe 3 feet tall, and the button is located at least 4.5 feet in the air. There's nothing surrounding the light that she could have climbed on, and nothing she could have moved to stand on to reach it. She was crying and motioning to the ceiling, saying, "Zaza, he scares me." No one she's ever met has had that nickname Zaza. I checked with my cousin the next day to make sure. I got her back to sleep and shut off the light, trying and failing to get more information out of her. I decided to stay up for a bit to listen for her getting up and filling with the light. It's around 12 a.m. now, and I heard JJ moving around her room. I heard someone scraping across the floor and thought, "Ha, gotcha." As I ran to the bedroom, I opened the door and saw darkness. JJ was fast asleep, with her face smushed into her plush toy. Nothing in the room had been touched. I freaked out a bit thinking I was hearing things when I heard W start to cry. I quickly closed the doors so JJ wouldn't wake up. W was absolutely inconsolable. She kept staring at the ceiling and crying so hard she could barely breathe. I saw in the corner of the room that her nursing chair was rocking back and forth, and it was in the middle of the room instead of against the window. I moved it back and stopped it from rocking and quickly grabbed W. We went to the kitchen and I just held her, not knowing what to do. I fell asleep on the couch with W and a baby bassinet next to me, and I woke up with JJ sleeping soundly next to us. The whole day, I took the girls out and had some fun with them at the park, library, and a parent-toddler group. Their dad came to pick them up, and I asked him about what had happened the night before. He knew that our whole family had experiences with the paranormal for most of their lives. So, he said it might be a close family member who passed, just checking in with us. That put me at ease, and I let him take the girls to lunch. I used the time to clean up the apartment so my cousin could come home to a clean place. I then took a shower to wash the child stickiness off myself. This is when I realized it wasn't my deceased family member. The family member who passed away was not vicious and would never play a prank on someone if they knew it would scare them. While I was in the shower, a hand visibly touched the curtain and smacked it before dissipating. I cried for 2 hours until the girls came home and sat on the balcony the whole time. I was seriously contemplating packing everything up and taking them to my house. That night was pure terror, expecting something to happen every time there was a noise. I made up a bed for JJ in the living room, where I was sleeping, and brought the bassinet out again for W. I cranked the TV and kept playing with the remote so the TV wouldn't time out. The girls seemed uneasy as well. Around 11 p.m., the girls were asleep when we heard the most awful scraping and dragging noise coming from the nursery. I told JJ to leave it and stay with me. I tried to ignore it, but it was obviously trying to get my attention. I turned around for 2 minutes to grab W, and JJ ran into the nursery. I forced myself to follow after, and when I got to the door, I saw a shadow in the corner of the room next to JJ. She was trying to reach out and touch whatever it was, and was babbling away about wanting mommy, and yes, I'm a good girl. As soon as she made eye contact with the shadow, I watched her ponytail swing back violently, as if it was being pulled by someone, and she flew backwards onto her bum. She was screaming, I was screaming, and we both ran to where baby W was to grab her. I drove over an hour with both girls back to my home and to the safety of my parents, took everything I could with me, and called my cousin the next morning to let her know what happened. She was crying and said that she had some scary occurrences lately, ever since her family member had passed. It only happens once a week or so, but she had apparently been touched by this entity in the shower multiple times, has seen it manifest in the living room and the girls' room, and has had it screwing through electronics in her apartment as well. It has been over 2 days since I returned the girls to her, and she had no experiences since. The girls are doing well and sleeping through the night. I hope it stays that way. The fact that this entity in our lives doesn't even leave children alone scares me. I want kids one day, and I don't want a baby growing up being terrified by whatever entity has latched itself onto my family. If anyone knows who Zaza might be, please let me know. I have a feeling it's either a demon or a bad spirit. The story happened when I was around 9 or 10, staying at my grandparents' house. It was late at night, and I was trying to get to sleep. My sister, who was sleeping in the same room, was currently asleep, but I wasn't tired. At this age, I wasn't allowed technology, so I had no phone or iPad to pass the time, and I wasn't tired enough to fall asleep. For some reason, probably because I was very bored, I decided to look out the window. Out of the window is my grandparents' back garden, which is long and thin and stretches quite far back. As I looked out the window, I could see a figure of a woman standing at the bottom of the garden. She looked very strange and looked like she was glowing. I was so scared, I quickly closed the curtains and started to panic, as I was very young and didn't know what to do. I was sat up in bed, very frightened, but wasn't sure what I had just seen. For some reason, I was compelled again to look out the window. So I slowly moved the curtain aside and looked out, and the woman had moved further down the garden towards the window and was looking at me. I was so frightened, I jumped away from the window and pulled my pillow over my face. I know that I didn't dream this, as I never fell asleep after that point, and lay there with the pillow on my face because I wasn't sure if I looked out, she would be in my room with me. I waited all night, scared shitless, until my granddad came in with a water and toast in the morning. I never told anyone, and honestly, don't believe that ghosts can exist, but I know for a fact I saw this. I am very conflicted, but thought I'd share my story. My hubby is thoughtful. He had the best of intentions when he bought the old, but safe, 1984 Mercedes for myself and our daughter in 2002. The problem? The car was haunted. Not just haunted. It was possessed by something that did not like me. Honestly, I felt it wasn't me specifically. It was the fact that I was a woman. My hubby was excited because the car had history. It had been used in films and was owned by a famous divorce attorney. Yes, the car had been used in many films, and its primary owner was a prominent divorce attorney. However, he only represented husbands. That's important for later. Oh, also, he was found passed away in the car. It was always parked on our driveway, outside of our garage. Once parked there, our garage and also the room adjacent to the garage, our living room, remained incredibly dark, even though our living room had an entire wall of windows. We could never seem to get enough light to see. There was a heaviness in the air too. Our daughter was petrified of the garage, even though now the car has been gone for years and she's now 25. She still turns on the lights before entering the garage. My husband was so excited with the car's history. Well, whatever the history, it was clear as crystal the car didn't like me. Anytime I drove it, it would stall and refuse to start. It would happen in bad places. The middle of the freeway was one, but its favorite was the middle of the intersection. I'd just be trying to get from point A to point B. Nope. I'd call my hubby. I'm dead in the intersection again. Strangers are pushing my car as we speak. He sent the mechanic, and the car was towed to his shop. The mechanic kept the car for 2 weeks, trying to duplicate the problem. No luck. It drove fine, all systems checked out. My hubby got a call to say the car was ready. He picked me up and dropped me off at the mechanic shop. He stayed to see that the car started. On the way home, it stalled. I informed my hubby then I no longer cared if he believed me. I refused to drive the car again. My husband was now the only driver. He never had an issue with stalling again. Once it went past smog, it began to set in our driveway and wreak havoc in our home. The darkness and the negative energy was so thick, it was suffocating. We were arguing all the time, over nothing. I went on for years. Finally, we decided to get rid of the car. A tow company was scheduled to come take it away, I took a picture during the process. I was nervous, but excited to be rid of this evil. I still have the picture. I swear to this day, there's a visible face in the driver's seat rear window that changed its expression as the car is being towed on the trailer. Once the car was gone, my home felt lighter. It was brighter. We no longer needed lights in our living room that had a wall of windows. The heaviness was gone. The anger and the frustration that we felt about one another was gone too. We just celebrated 32 years together. If we'd kept that car, we'd be divorced, or one of us be dead by now. That I'm sure of. So this probably isn't as scary as most of the stories on the subreddit, but I'll put this here anyway. I was 16 when this happened. So, my mom and I stayed the night at my sister's house. We were staying in a bedroom in the basement. The basement was completely renovated. It had windows and a door leading to the backyard, so not very creepy. My mom, sister, and their kids were all upstairs eating breakfast while I went to have a shower in the bathroom next to our room. Everything was fine until I got out and was drying myself off. As I was drying myself off, the light started lightly flickering, but I didn't think anything of it. I realized I forgot to grab my clothes, so I quickly dried off, wrapped the towel around myself, and went to the door. It didn't open. I figured that I might have locked the door, but just forgot, though I wasn't sure I didn't, and unlocked it, and tried to open it. It still didn't open. It was then that the light started to flicker more rapidly, as if someone was quickly hitting the light switch off and on. I started to freak out, and desperately tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge, no matter what I did. The light started to flicker on and off quicker and quicker. I yelled for help, and I could hear my mom running down the stairs. But then the light stopped, and I was suddenly able to open the door, right as my mom was rounding the corner to enter the hallway. When I told my mom and sister, they thought it was so funny. My sister said it was probably the steam making the lights flicker, but that doesn't explain why the door wouldn't open, no matter which way I turned the lock. The whole incident, from when the lights started rapidly flickering to when I was able to open the door, probably lasted 25 to 30 seconds. Tonight's stories were 6 true paranormal stories from Reddit. The author's Reddit links are in the description below. Please check them out and show them some love. Hey, did you know I have merch? Yeah, crazy, right? But I do. If you'd like to walk around representing my realm and gaining me new travelers, the links to my merch store, as well as all my other social medias, will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Rando Calrissian, Pam, Seraphine the Midnight Bard, Creepy Con Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair Raising Narratives, and Spooky Boo Scary Story Time. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers by the light of my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. Just remember the support is always appreciated but never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and if you're new, why not ding that bell for all future content?
And remember, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping